Hello, thank you for joining me. In this firecraft video, we're going to talk about ways to initiate a fire without using matches. Now you might look at the environment and wonder at it. It's not very authentic, isn't it? It's not a wilderness setting. True, but two thoughts. One, as soon as someone pulls out the words authentic, you've lost me because that screams fake and forced. Right? Two, there's an idea I want to impress upon you. The idea that even in an urban or suburban environment, there are training opportunities. Right? If you're making a fire in your family's fireplace, you can crumple up lots of newspaper and stuff the fireplace full of it, and underneath all the logs and that, and you throw some matches at it, and you will have a result. Or you can treat it as an opportunity to hone your skills. No paper, natural tinder, using a ferro rod, get the spark, cultivate the flame, and all that. Okay. Likewise, even in a suburban or urban environment, we can find a lot of game sign out there. The animals we're looking at may be different. Right? We may see less deer, but we certainly can still squirrels, and here in New Haven, feral cats. All right, we can still practice following a track. We can still spot animal sign, that kind of thing. So I would like you to always think about how can I keep my skills honed, just as we should also be thinking about how do we improvise and overcome, right? Because that's going to be one of the central themes today. All right, why not use matches? This is why. Matches get wet, matches fail. Match striker gets wet, that fails as well. Yes, there are strike anywhere matches, but they get wet, they're wrecked. But they're considered unsafe, and you're not allowed to bring them into aircraft. So matches are easy, but like a cigarette lighter, very unreliable. We want that absolute bulletproof solution. Now there are storm matches, and they typically come in containers like this, although sometimes they come in a box. And take one out, and they have a lacquer on them, and they're pretty cool. They're also really difficult to use, at least this type is. So when I try to start it, I'm going to choke it up here, because if I hold it back here, as you might with a normal match, it invariably snaps and becomes useless. The problem is the strikers can fail pretty easy. They get worn out very quickly, and even when they're new, it's a bit shaky. So it's not the most reliable way. But with this striker, I've got a result. And if I blow it out, it will restart. You might, didn't work that time. But sometimes, even if they get soaked, they can restart. Now, this is America, so we also have the big ones. Lacquer or earth treatment over the sulfur. And let's see if we can put it out, and it's back up and running. So these are very impressive, and I certainly would encourage you to consider having them on hand, but even this is not as bulletproof a solution. And of course, you're eventually going to run out of matches anyway, so it's a good practice to develop your skills with alternate fire initiating systems. And the favorite is got to be the Ferro Rod, all right? Very easy to use. The Boy Scout one, which is what I had as a scout, absolutely works. Just bigger is better kind of thing. Anyway, we'll need some tinder. And my absolute favorite tinder of all time is cotton with Vaseline. Now we're going to talk about tinders, but the key is it should be dry, albeit with Vaseline it'll still work. We need edges, and we need aeration. Right? So air needs to be able to get in there, and we need edges to catch the spark. Or if we're using a flame, we really need edges. So if you're going to use paper, you really need to shred it up. And we're going to talk about other materials. You always want those edges. Right? Boom, done. And with Vaseline, even if it gets wet, you can initiate, and it will burn hotter and stronger. But plain cotton works quite well. Thank you very much. Okay, some other materials we might use. Well, When I was in Troop 7 in Greenwich Council, at the camporee, I would just walk around our campsite, invariably find some natural fiber, rope, string, twine, and then pluck at it to create a bird's nest, and it makes a very good system. And we would always get 18 out of 20 on the Firecraft. All right, catches the spark nice and easy, works great. Could you use nylon or polyester? It won't work as well, and it burns toxic. So we're really looking for natural fiber. Jute is ideal, hemp, con, they also work out well. The other option is something called fatwood. We're looking for a tree, a pine tree, or other softwood like a hemlock or a cedar that's died a violent death. Not something that's been cut down with a chainsaw. And what will happen is the sap will run to that one piece that's sticking out. And then we take a saw, we cut this off, and we keep it because it's gold. Scrape a bunch into a pile. And hit it with a spark. It's that easy, right? Stuff is great. So if you're walking particularly in a pine forest, such as we see out west, definitely keep an eye out for a tree that's died a violent death, and grab yourself some fat wood. It's fantastic stuff. All right. Okay. Other things. Well, out west, not so much a New England thing, is something called goat's beard. This is a plant that grows on trees, pine trees, and it's just hanging there, and you grab it and you can put inside your jacket or sweater to help dry it out, or leave it around your house for a few years, and this works great. Birch bark is a fantastic one. All right, particularly this is like a paper birch, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is the importance of being really persistent with your firecraft and have a mindset of, I will not quit. So if I don't succeed at first, I don't say, oh, never mind. I'm going to pause, think about maybe what I need to do a better job of it, such as get some more edges here. Okay. And have another go. Had it. There we go. Okay, good stuff. Another option is cedar bark. Take it, break it up, and so you get like a bird's nest, and that can catch a spark and work out quite nicely. All right. Can we use paper? Yes, but again, we want to make sure we've got really good aeration. And edges, right, to catch that spark. Oh, and there's some magnesium. We'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so let's talk about some different ferro rods. This one uses a bit of hacksaw blade, which is an excellent thing. Yeah, using the edge of your knife to drive sparks is not the best thing for your knife, but that nice sharp edge works great. This is why many woodcraft knives use a very squared back to have that edge to drive sparks off a ferro rod. And this one incorporates a small compass. This one's got a really aggressive striker. That's fantastic. All right. Here's another one. And again, something with fairly decent edge on it, and nice little lanyard. This one is kind of an E&E version. It's a button, but it is a ferro rod, so you could sew this into a garment, and then you would have the ability to start a fire with it. Here we have a much more compact one. There's a lot to be said for having a compact ferro rod in your survival kit. Consider it simple. This one is interesting. It incorporates a magnesium block along with the ferro rod, and I'll show you how that works. You're going to take your knife, and you really should scrape the magnesium into some other tinder, all right, to catch as a bird's nest, but it will burn quite hot. There's the magnesium right there burning. Okay, obviously you're not going to get a long flame out of it, so it's a supplement. Particularly helpful if the environment's wet and you're dealing with that kind of a challenge. All right. Another product. This I haven't even really used it out in the field, as it were, but it's an interesting idea. It's apparently 550 cord, but no. Inside this 550 cord, we have something that this guy right here wants to burn. So we'll take them out and we'll unravel them and have a go. I'm going to use this. Oh, almost got it. Again, pause, think about what you're doing. Really should open this up some more. Let's have a go. And there we go. Okay. So, jury's kind of out on that product, but it seems like resists wind reasonably well. So I certainly want to look at that. But my all-time favorite is cotton balls and Vaseline. This is a film canister, and I'll keep this in the lid of my pack. And then often bottom of a compass pouch or such in a small Ziploc bag, right? Stuff in the bottom of the pouch. This thing comes out in wet, it will burn. Hooray for me, okay? When it comes to natural tinders, Birch Bark is fantastic. It's a personal favorite of mine. The fat wood is really handy to have. That's another really good one. All right, so besides using a metal match, aka a ferro rod, what else could we use? Well, there is that classic 9-volt battery and some steel wool. All right, again, and we can use steel wool theoretically as a tinder as well. It does burn. We want to aerate it, and then we are shorting out the battery. So too much electricity is going through the wires, and it's almost like a riot of electricity. All right. Hooray, that worked. But here's the problem. Will it work with the typical Brillo Pad that we have in our kitchen? The sort that we might take with us on a camping trip? Sort of, but not really. So it's a bit of a questionable practice in that really fine Brillo pads, steel wool rather, that we use in woodworking to polish finishes and the like. It's unlikely we're going to have them out in the wilderness, but we might have one of these. So it begs the question, how much electromotive force or volts is it going to take to initiate one of these? And 9 volts is a bit optimistic. Right? Again, We can certainly wreck the battery. We can get some smoke going. But we're not getting a real proper fire. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to show you my personal favorite. Potassium permanganate it's like the chemical of wilderness survival. You can actually use this to purify water, to create antiseptic if you have wounds you need to clean out. Don't be swallowing this. But in small amounts in water, gotta wait 24 hours, you can purify water. But what I want to show you with it today, this is going to be like my sort of morrison pestle. I'm going to tap out a little bit of this. I do keep potassium permanganate in my survival kits as a matter of course. And you need some sugar as an oxidizer. And if we rub these two together, we get a fire. Okay. Very easy. So one of the first things I'll put in a survival kit is some potassium permanganate. You will need some sugar, all right? But again, a lot of this is about, there are things that may come to hand that I can start a fire with. What might they be? You're still getting a little glow there. Nice. All right. Can you start a fire with a magnifying glass? And the answer is yes, but if you're going to use a conventional magnifying glass to do this, it's very hard to hold it steady enough to concentrate that sunlight on that tinder to get the fire going. So if I were going to use a conventional magnifying glass, I would want to brace it with some rocks or jury rig something up with some branches and twine or something so that I'm not trying to hold it steady. It's locked in place. The sun's doing its thing. Heat is being concentrated and I can get a fire. This is a pocket Fresnel lens and these things work great. And it's worth considering putting one of these in a survival kit to initiate a fire. Now, in a actual survival situation, if you didn't have one of those, what you might be able to do, perhaps eyeglasses, perhaps a pair of binoculars, some other optic. Please don't wreck my binoculars for training purposes, but if it was bird watching or die, we're going to smash those Steiners or Zeiss and we're going to get the lenses out and we'll have a go. But again, you would need to really kind of lock it in place because it's very hard to hold a lens steady enough to get a result short of a Fresnel lens on a really sunny day. So it's kind of situational dependent. So flint and steel. The idea is it's not the flint that's making the spark. It's actually the steel, right? It doesn't have to be a piece of flint, but flint is an ideal rock because it's so incredibly hard. And what we're actually doing is we're breaking off pieces of steel to create that spark. So this is a dedicated kit. You might try using an old file. Don't use anything you really care about because the whole premise of this is we're breaking off very small pieces of metal and that metal gets really hot because it's just been sheared off. It's next level friction as it were, and we need to catch that spark on some, typically we use char cloth, and we'll talk about making char cloth in a bit. I'm having a devil of time with that. Okay, there, I legit did it. It was becoming an ego thing / a never quit exercise. So, it's legit, it works, but it's not easy, and you really need to have something that's going to catch that spark and take care of business. All right. So, brings us to the last one, most famous or infamous, I guess we could say, which is a bow and drill. Okay. Now, this is how you impress people. It's not easy. And I was taking a class, and I was the one student who did a cedar on cedar successfully. And then the next day, they gave us all yucca sticks, and everyone did it, and hooray. And I shared this with Michael, the naturalist up in Mohawk Mountain House, and his attitude was like, great, do it oak on oak, and then report back to me. I needed to hear that. It's worth learning because it's very satisfying. You can impress people with it. And it would fit in a scenario not, oh my gosh, one of our group has fallen into a frozen body of water, they're going hypothermic, we need a fire in the next 2 to 3 minutes. But I could certainly see a scenario where a group of people are sailing along the African coast or South American coast, some part where the coast isn't densely populated as is around here, and there's a wreck, you lose the boat, you get ashore with whatever's on your person. So you might have a sailor's knife or something like that, but okay, we're going to need to get a fire going for signaling purposes as well as cooking, water purification, whatever. Maybe we're not getting that fire today, but we will get it. And this is something that you can rig up there. But wood selection matters. And you say, well, why not use a yucca stick? That's all that's left. It was once a foot long, and I kept doing nice demonstrations, and it works great, and then it's that long. Okay, so we have a piece of cedar. This is admittedly for lumber grade, as it were. All right, I'm going to want something really good, what we call bird's nest, to catch the ember. Okay, a lot of people will use even like a leaf. So they'll catch on the leaf and then they'll transfer it over. Okay, we want something that we can get that into. All right. So we have a notch and a hole, and we're going to be running this piece of wood. I took some Vaseline to lube this up. We want to minimize the friction up top. So I put some Vaseline there, and away I go. A lot of times people have even advocated using like a shot glass taped up with 100-mile-an-hour tape so that you can really have a good result with that. There are some woodcraft knives or survival knives that actually incorporate a socket in the handle for this. Okay. Bow, 3 feet long or so, with a bit of a curve. Okay. Some 550 cord. In theory, you could use a bootlace if you had to. You might use natural cordage if you were in a starting from zero type situation. Okay. The most important thing is you gotta believe, and you gotta be persistent, and you have to have a good rhythm and have everything locked down. So what I mean by that is, you can see how I'm tucking this up against my body, so I can go nice and steady. And it will not necessarily work on the first try. I need to make this a little bit tighter.